At Reel-to-Reel Warehouse, we developed a new tape classification system to help users of reel-to-reel tape recorders and equipment best find the tapes that match their machine. What we tried to do is do an overall survey of all the tapes that were ever made and try to classify them in terms of performance, not only relative performance within their category, but how the different categories match up. I've mentioned this before on previous videos, and I've written about it on our website. You know, tape production spans a long time, from the late 40s really until today. And for reel-to-reel tape production, in terms of innovation, innovation continued in reel-to-reel tape production through the early 2000s. Today, what you find that people are making now for reel-to-reel tapes are largely tested formulas that were popular 10 or 20 years ago, really the best formulations ever made. So how did it all get started? I like to use, the first tape I like to start with is the Scotch 111 as a reference tape. We call that a standard tape. So the first tapes are called Type 1 standard tapes. What standard means is that they're standard. At the time, standard tapes were made really from the inception of tape manufacture all the way through the early 70s, and were the primary tapes sold and used through the 50s and 60s. They all had a very similar bias requirement, similar signal-to-noise ratio for the good standard tapes, and I like to, they're standard. It's what started it all. So this first one I like to show is the Scotch 111. This is a famous tape. They used this in studios for many of the famous jazz recordings were done on Scotch 111. At the time, the first tapes were made out of acetate, cellulose acetate. You can kind of tell what cellulose acetate looks like because you can see through the tape. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but you can actually see through the tape. You can put your fingers and see your fingers in the back of it. That's how you can tell it's an acetate tape. Acetate tapes were used in professional recording through the 70s. One of the reasons why people liked them is that they broke easy. Like they snap when they break, but they don't stretch. So if you snap the tape, you can easily tape it back and it's fine. The later tapes, the polyester tapes, which are more robust and are designed to use over a wider temperature range and longer storage properties, they stretch. And so people in the professional fields didn't use those for a long time because of that. But acetate tapes were very popular. Today, I don't recommend using acetate tapes. The problem is that acetate changes its properties based upon the atmosphere. So if it's too dry, it kind of dries up and shrinks. If it's too wet, it kind of becomes wavy. It's very difficult to get acetate tapes to store well over time. And certainly if you're coming into older tapes that are 50 and 60 years old, a lot of times it's hard to get them to play because they're just kind of wavy. They have this country lane effect. So the Scotch 111 it's an acetate tape. They started production of this formula, I think, in 1949. So let's go to another popular tape related to that. Is the ubiquitous Scotch 150. The Scotch 150 was one of the first long play tapes. Now here's another thing that complicates it. The 111 is a standard play tape. The standard play tape is 1,200 feet on a 7-inch reel with a thickness of 1.5 mil, and you get at 7.5 inches per second around 30 minutes, or 15 minutes if you're doing 15 inches per second. Long play extends that by 50%, right? So that's an 1,800 foot reel on a 7-inch reel, 1 mil thickness. The 150 tapes, they came out, this is a 150 tape. These tapes came out in 1954, so relatively early on the scene. The 150s were out in 1954 and became very popular. You can tell them by their red oxide. Other famous tapes at the time are the Audiotape. You know, at the time, Audiotape, which was headquartered in New York City, Audio Devices, they were in the 50s and early 60s a true competitor to Scotch for all of the studio tapes. They were really heavy into that, and these are excellent tapes that can still be used today. This is an Audiotape 1861, another great standard tape to use. Probably the best standard tapes, however, were from Ampex. Ampex was started as Oradio Industries. Benjamin Orr went to Germany to learn about tape production and brought that expertise to the United States. One of the things that his company started out as Irish, so there's some Irish tape still available. Later, Irish became a sub-brand of Ampex. One of that's interesting about what Benjamin Orr invented was called the ferrosheen process, which was a way of heat treating the tape and calendering it, where you use multiple rollers with heat to smooth the oxide surface. This does a couple of important things, and I think they were the first company to really promote this. It reduces oxide shedding and improves the frequency response. One of the things about some of the older standard tapes, if we take a look at them, is that they have a very rough edge. Remove this from the bag. I can't really see it on the video, but you can, the coating is almost a matte coating. And you can kind of see that, a matte coating like this would wear the heads more. Let's just look at it. Over time, they would become shinier over use over the heads. And some people have even measured, I actually measured, an improvement in frequency response on these old tapes that were already made shiny, because you get better tape-to-head contact because you don't have that roughness. But if you take a look at a typical Ampex tape, an Ampex tape from that era has a much shinier surface. I mean, this surface is almost like a modern tape. They were one of the first manufacturers to really work on this. As a result, not only are these the best standard tapes available, that's my opinion. Ampex 641, 941, 341, these are the best standard tapes that were made at the time because of their attention to detail on that head. The other tape that is also very good at that time were the BASF LGS series. The LGS series were made with PVC backing as opposed to the polyester backing which these others were made from. And I found that the LGS series also has very low oxide shedding and very good frequency response. These tapes, they stopped making them, I think, in 1967. But to this day, they are still good. Later on, the BASF tapes that are standard tapes just became the standard LP and DP tapes. Again, I've mentioned in other videos, a lot of these tapes came in these standard gray containers, and that's confusing for people because you don't really know what tape is in there. So this is a standard double play tape in this one, but also a very good tape available at the time. Other popular tapes that you might find, standard tapes, are Soundcraft. Soundcraft was another high-quality manufacturer that was absorbed in the late 60s. They also had a process similar to ferrosheen, and they have low shedding and high quality. So if you find Soundcraft tapes, they're pretty good. Another very famous standard tape is the Sony PR150. Why is this so famous? It's because all the Vietnam vets that came home, a lot of them came home with tape machines. Sony single motor tape machines. They were very popular. And they were all biased for Sony PR150. This is the standard tape at the time. They made this well into the mid-70s. There's some instances that people have with this tape of squealing, but some of the old lots seem to be pretty good. You find a lot of PR150 out there, so some of it can be used, but it's a standard tape. Other ones are a Scotch 200. This is one of the first double play tapes made. Also brought out. Very similar oxide coating to the 150. A couple of points I want to make about standard tapes. This was really the beginning of tape production. The quality of the tapes, or the capability of the tapes, most of the time exceeded the capability of the machines. So as a result, there really wasn't much innovation required on the tapes. So for the most part, up until the 60s, not much innovation was made on tapes. A couple of words about the different tape lengths and types. You have single play, which is the standard tape; long play, which is 50% longer length on the same reel. Then you have double play. That's a very thin tape with double the length of the standard tape. The Scotch 200 was a double play tape. Interestingly, there's two types of double play tapes. There's the European and Japanese style, where you actually had 0.5 mil backing and a thinner magnetic coating to create tape that will fit on the reel. As opposed to in America, where you had a very thin 0.5 mil and the same coating thickness as the standard play and long play tape. That means theoretically, if you get a double play tape from Scotch or Ampex or another American manufacturer, the actual performance of the tape is going to be the same as the single play or long play tape. With the other manufacturers, the performance is slightly reduced because of the slightly thinner oxide coating. That's an important philosophical difference from the way those tapes were produced. BASF, AGFA, and Maxell, those double play tapes all had a slightly thinner oxide coating, but a slightly thicker polyester backing. You can look at it in two ways. Double play tapes from those countries are a little bit more robust. The ones in the US are a little bit thinner, a little bit difficult to work with.